Welcome to Talking Pictures. My name is Christian Genzel. I'm a filmmaker and film journalist from Salzburg, Austria. Talking Pictures is a podcast series in which I talk to the people who made some of my favorite movies. Today's guest, however, is not a filmmaker, but his best-known work is closely connected to one of the most popular movie series of all time. It is novelist Rob MacGregor, who wrote the novelization of Steven Spielberg's third Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and then went on to write 6 more original Indy adventures shortly afterwards, starting with Indiana Jones and the PERIL at DELPHI in 1991, and then continuing with Dance of the Giants, The Seven Veils, The GENESIS Deluge, The Unicorn's Legacy, and Indiana Jones and the Interior World throughout 1991 and 1992. Rob also wrote many other novels, including the Will Lansa Young Adult series, which started with Prophecy Rock in 1995, and the Nicholas Pearce series, which started with Crystal Skull in 1991. He also published many other mysteries, adventure stories, and science fiction and fantasy stories, including Seventh Born and Tulpas. He wrote books together with Peter Benchley and with Billy Dee Williams, and he wrote novelizations for movies like The Phantom and Spawn. He also wrote numerous non-fiction books, many of them with his wife Trish MacGregor, including books on synchronicity, psychic powers, and paranormal mysteries. In our conversation, Rob recalls his early days as a writer and his journey into the world of Indiana Jones. He talks about working on the various Indy novels and the connections between the stories, the input of George Lucas and Lucasfilm, the popularity of the Indy books, and some of his influences in terms of mythology and writing. The interview was conducted in connection with our German language podcast Lichtspielplatz. So if you speak German, please visit lichtspielplatz.at and check out episode number 64, which features an in-depth discussion of the Indiana Jones novels by Rob MacGregor, Max McCoy, and Wolfgang Holbein. Also, make sure to listen to my interview with Max McCoy here on Talking Pictures, the novelist who continued the Indiana Jones novel series with 4 more books in the late 90s. If you enjoy my conversation with Rob MacGregor, please visit talkingpicturespodcast.com to check out more interviews and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So, without any further ado, here is Rob MacGregor, who is unsure whether he should reread his indie books after all those years.
I've been told I should, that they're pretty good.
They are, yes.
but once I start reading, I just, a couple of things. I think, did I really write this? And then I think I got to get busy with my stuff, but I am surprised how I was able to just plow into those one after another. Every 4 months I had a deadline, and I would get one out. Next day I would start on the second one and the next one. And 4 months later I had to be ready. I did that for 4 books, and then they said, you want to do a couple more, and so it gave me a contract for 2 more. And then as I finished that 6th one, actually 7th, because I'd adapted Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, I said, I need a break from this. I want to do something else. And they immediately hired somebody else to take over the series.
Oh, okay.
But I'm happy with those 7 books. And then eventually they came back and offered me the chance to adapt, I think it was the 6th version of the Indiana Jones game, the Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings. And I did that, wrote it, and then there was confusion about when the game was coming out, and when and they said, well, the game won't be out, so the book won't be out for a while. And then suddenly the game was out, and they said, oh, the game's out. We're not going to publish the book now because we wanted to bring it out at the same time as the game. And so it just went into hibernation for years. It became the Lost Indiana Jones novel.
It's kind of fitting that the Indiana Jones world also has sort of an artifact, like a lost novel.
Right, yeah. Now it's kind of been unlost. It's out as an ebook and as audio that I recorded, the audio. And it's free of charge, since I don't have the rights to the book. It's Lucasfilm and Disney own it, but I've been waiting for them to come to me and say, take that down. No, nobody said anything. So
okay.
So it's doing all right. But I relate to it as like a fan novel. They put up fan novels online, and so in that reference, it seemed to be okay. Although I was paid to write it, but they just didn't publish it.
But that must be frustrating, right? When you put so much work into something and that never sees the light of day. I mean, until now.
Yeah, right. And people were coming to me year after year. Can you print out a copy of that? I want to get it. And finally, a couple of real ardent fans that I sent them out to, and they apparently sent it out to 2 or 3. I guess there were like 6 copies of it out, I heard. And then I said, I might as well just, bring it out myself. And so that's how it started.
Wow, the retrieval of the lost artifact.
Right, yeah.
So let's go back a little bit to the beginning of your journey with that leads you into the world of Indiana Jones. I read that you had an interest in archaeology, but you decided against studying archaeology and you studied journalism instead. So what was it that drew you to essentially both of these fields? What was it that interested you?
I was always curious about the ancient past, and when I was in high school, I think it was 9th grade, freshman, everybody had to write a paper on the career they wanted to pursue, and I was the only one in my school who decided to want to be an archaeologist. So I wrote that paper and presented it to the class, and then when I got to college, I started taking anthropology classes, and it was going okay, but it didn't quite feel right. And then I took one journalism class, and I realized that was it for me, that I could see with journalism, with a career and a job afterwards, where after graduating with a degree in anthropology and to become an archaeologist, it meant more years of study. And there's not that many, at least at the time, there were not that many working archaeologists in the world. And it just seemed like a better fit for me as a journalist. And what I would do is get a job and work for a year and a half, save my money. And then I still had the same interest with archaeology. And so I would save my money, quit my job, and take off to go to the ruins in Mexico, South America, Central America, Europe, North Africa. And I did that for a number of years. And so I know, which meant I didn't proceed that rapidly in my career as a journalist, although I would always able to find another newspaper job when I got back. But it eventually I just began thinking, I've got to break out of this, and the only thing I can think of doing is becoming a freelance writer. So I started putting out query letters and sold an article here and there, but not making much money. And then I was still working at a newspaper when I interviewed my person who became my wife, and she had the same goal, to get out of her job as a teacher. She worked at Florida International University, and she was teaching English as a second language to Cuban refugees at the time, which is what I was writing about. And so we got together, and we thought we both wanted to be freelance writers, and we had about $5,000 saved, and we both quit our jobs and headed out as careers. And so, of course, that money didn't last that long. But somehow we started selling articles, but we were selling them, but the money was low and slow. And so we both took part-time jobs. And for a year. And Trish, when I had met her, she had just finished her 6th unpublished novel. And so she had, for the past 6 years, she had written a novel every year. And so this last one, I think she had about 23 or 24 rejections of it, and she gave it to me, and I read it over, and I suggested some changes. She rewrote it and gave it to her agent. She was fortunate to have a literary agent that was staying with her all this time. It was thinking that she was going to, break out and sell a novel. And so I think it was the 25th or 26th publisher it was sent to. And back in the early 80s, there were a lot more publishers than there are now. They're all kind of merged together in New York, and so not as many opportunities as there are now in mainstream publishing, that is. And so, and she was able to sell it. And shortly after that, I got a job writing a nonfiction book for a corporate CEO in Washington, D.C. And we quit our part-time jobs. And that was about 90 or 85, 80, 84, 85 fall. And we've been at it ever since. Yeah.
Wow, that's a great tribute to tenacity.
Yeah, right. Just kept at it. We didn't know what else to do, so and we enjoyed writing. So
yeah, when you're passionate about something, then it's just something I think you have to follow.
Yeah.
And so how did you become involved with writing the novelization for the third Indiana Jones movie? I read that you weren't that familiar with the world of Indiana Jones when you were offered the job. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, well, in a way I was, because I had done a lot of things like Indiana Jones, traveled around and gone to sites, ruins, archaeological sites. But the agent who offered me the job, she didn't know that, and the publisher never knew it, that my background, and that I had started out with an interest in becoming an archaeologist. They didn't know that. It was because I had written a couple of novels that were based on a television series that was supposed to be a big hit, because it was the producer of Miami Vice had this new supposedly hot series. And Trish and I had written a nonfiction book called The Making of Miami Vice. And I guess it was that connection. They offered me to adapt a couple of the scripts, which I did. I did one, and then they said, the agent came to me and said, the other writer who's doing this series has just quit, and I need this book really fast. Do you think you could do it in 6 weeks? And I said, well, I'll try. And I managed to do it and get it out. And by the time the books came out, the series didn't exist anymore. So they were they didn't do that well. But anyhow, she said, she thanked me and said, how would you like to adapt the script of the next Indiana Jones novel or Indiana Jones movie? I said, sure. And so that's how I got into it. And, it wasn't like I was in a lot of competition that they were looking at, a half dozen or a dozen writers. It just was handed to me, and very fortuitous situation, and I'm sure there were a lot of other writers who would have liked to have stepped in there at the time, but it's a case of being in the right place at the right time. And, when you're starting out, writing, you don't have all those contacts, and you think, oh, this is never going to get anywhere. But as you keep plugging on, and you tend to step by step making those contacts. And just for me, it was just being in the right spot at the right time. And then Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade became a New York Times bestseller, and they said, oh, would you like to do some original Indiana Jones novels, and that's how it got started. They offered me a contract to write 4 of them, and they're very open about how I wanted to do it. But George Lucas said, make it the 1920s before the movies. So in 1920s was a very interesting decade too. So historically, and it was that was fun to do, to work in some of the characters like Al Capone and in Chicago, and but it stayed, of course, with the theme of Indiana Jones, with the artifacts and the pursuit of the different characters who wanted to take over the world, and Indy's fight against them, and his love interest that he meets along the way, for better and worse.
I find it interesting when you're saying that you got a contract for 4 books, and then I mean, when I look at the books, all of them sort of form a whole concept that ultimately leads to the 6th one, where everything is connected, where there's sort of like all the threads come together of all the different mysteries. And I mean, even in the first book, you have you set up some of the stuff that only comes into play in the later books, like, for example, Indiana's spirit animal, which is mentioned in the first book in the PERIL at Delphi, and then it comes into play in the Unicorn's Legacy. So how much of that concept did you write beforehand, and how much of that developed as you went along?
It just developed as I went along. I probably couldn't come up with any new ideas, so I tagged something from the past. That's probably how it worked. I don't remember, but it seemed to work out.
Wow, I was so sure that you planted all those moments there in order to have a payoff in one of the later books.
Not at all. It didn't work that way. They would ask me for a very slim outline of what each story was, and some of them they would reject. But most of them they had no problem with. It was like I would write about a page and a half, and that's about it. Most of them were accepted, and I did write one about Crystal Skull, and George said, "No, we're not going to do Crystal Skull," which I guess he was kind of hanging on to that one himself. And also, when I first began, my idea was to start with an old Indiana Jones, and he's an old guy, 92 years old. He's got an eye patch and a cane and a little dog, and he starts talking and introducing the story, basically, and then the story takes off, and then at the end, the epilogue, we come back to the old man is kind of wrapping it up. And George Lucas said, "Nobody wants to see an old Indiana Jones. Take that out." So then a few years later, he comes out with a television series called The Young Indiana Jones. It begins with an old Indiana Jones in his 90s. He's got an eye patch, a cane, and a little dog. And that looks a little familiar. I guess it wasn't such a bad idea after all. But I'm working for him, and it's so I'm just very happy to have the opportunity to contribute to this legacy of Indiana Jones, and this is kind of a unique hero, and somebody who's will live on, I think.
How would you define Indiana Jones as a hero?
He's somebody he's an archaeologist. He's somewhat skeptical, but he's interested in the mystical. But when he gets close to it, it's too much. He tends to back off from it, and so he's not a perfect hero by any means. He has shortcomings, which makes for a good hero, I think. because if you're too perfect, then it's, you know, not believable. He's a believable hero, is what he is.
Mm. You have an interesting quote in the first book by I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Thucydides, where you write, "The bravest are surely those who have the clearest vision of what is before them, glory and danger alike, and yet notwithstanding go out to meet it." So I kind of had a feeling that this was sort of like a setup for introducing Indiana Jones as a hero.
Yeah, that sounds like his technique, his approach, to go face the danger and see if he can deal with it and come through with the goods.
How much did you study the films? I mean, obviously you were familiar with The Last Crusade, having adapted the screenplay, but did you also look at the first two films to sort of find out what the essence of his character is?
Oh yeah, I watched the films a couple of times each, and I fell into that character pretty well. I mean, it was easy for me to write Indy, and I've heard that a couple of the other writers who did it, who took it up, don't quite sound the same, or they don't sound like the Indiana Jones that I followed. But people have said that the way I wrote Indiana Jones was very similar to how they see the character in the movies. It just seemed to be something that I was, you know, able to understand that kind of quirkiness about him and pursue it.
Did you have a concept about his character development over the course of those 6 books?
Well, I mean, in The Last Crusade, I expanded on his youth, and where he went on a vision quest, which is not in the movie at all, and he had an experience, a mystical experience that would follow him the rest of his life, and in his pursuit. And it was interesting with the Indiana Jones Last Crusade, they gave me a script of, I think it was 112 pages, and I had to turn that into like a 65,000 word novel. And, you know, a lot of those pages have camera directions and, you know, and very few words on them. So I had to, you know, get more into the character's head, Indy's head mainly, and come up with some additional scenes. So I expanded the story. And then when I saw the movie, well, Spielberg did just the opposite. He took that script and condensed it, taking out scenes. So to me, the movie went really fast. I mean, there was stuff in the script that wasn't there, and of course there was a lot of stuff that wasn't there. And I just thought, well, I wonder if are people going to like this movie, you know, because to me it just it just went by really fast, and it just felt like there's stuff missing.
Yeah, the pace is somewhat different, but of course it's a different medium, so I think
right, exactly. Yeah, I'm doing one right now. In fact, I'm adapting a script, and you know, it's the same situation that I have to. This author, this scriptwriter wants it to be 70 to 75,000 words. So again, I need to, or I have been adding scenes on that one. So that's same process.
Yeah, that was always fascinating to me when to read the novelizations of movies that I loved, to see sort of to find the stuff that is different in the novels, the stuff that was added, or the stuff that sort of diverges from the movie, just the little differences.
Right.
Sometimes happen because it's an early script version, or sometimes because the writer has a slightly different idea about a certain scene.
So yeah, most people think of you know, it book to movie, not movie to books. You know, it's and they're surprised sometimes to find out that it also works the other way. And there have been some that have been some in the fantasy world that have been expanded upon the movies, and been quite successful in their own right. Don't ask me for a name though.
You added a couple of characters to the world of Indiana Jones that sort of became very important in this prequel era, let's call it that. And I think the most important character is the character of Deirdre, the woman whom Indiana Jones eventually marries and then unfortunately who dies by the end of the third book.
Yeah, I realized, well, I got to kill her off because Indiana Jones is not supposed to be married. And in fact, there's some controversy about that in the Indiana Jones Bible. There was a person who actually had a job working for Lucasfilm in the creating the Indiana Jones Bible for before the fourth movie came out, and I met with him and others that were involved in that movie, but at the time I was involved with just starting with the adaptation of the game, and so things were overlapping there. And but this person who is the head of the Bible, he was very upset that I had Indy married, and he said that wasn't supposed to be that way. Nobody said it. What? Nobody told me not to. And unfortunately, she didn't live long.
Yeah, but she's really a great character. I mean, it's really sad to see her die, and she's such a great companion to Indy on his adventures.
Right.
And just in terms of how he reacts to her, I think is interesting because, I mean, he's a younger Indiana Jones, and he really becomes nervous when she talks to him at the beginning. I thought it was a very interesting trait. Yeah.
And he is a character I created, his buddy from the past named Jack Shannon. That it's one of the things that novel. Everything can't be in the main character, the protagonist's head. He's got to have somebody to play off a love interest, of course, but also a buddy character is very useful, and that's how Jack came in. Yeah, he's kind of like a combination of a couple friends of mine from the past in Minneapolis. That's how I created him.
I see.
Involved in the musical industry, music industry. Yeah.
Also jazz musicians?
One of them was, yeah. So it just came into play in creating a character, that character who was helpful for moving the pace of the story ahead.
Yeah.
And with the Genesis Deluge, he kind of goes off on a born again Christian thing, and Indy said, wait a minute, this is Jack, what's going on with you? And it's if there's any myth that's not true, it's that Noah's Ark is real. That Indy was very skeptical about that at the beginning. But that book, I think, probably sold more than any of the others, and I think had an interest that captured an interest from that audience, that believers, and I would even getting telephone calls from people that ministers and that, and I said, I'm really not in that
Wow.
that kind of person. Sorry. That was one of the characters, but that's not me.
Did they want to talk about the concept of the Ark? Or?
Oh yeah, right. And they had their own ideas, of course, for more biblical related novels, but I was
wow. I mean, one can sense in all of the novels that you know a lot about all of the, not just the historical parts of the story, but also the mythology, all the concepts and the legends and everything. Was that something that you researched while you were writing the books, or was it something that you had sort of in your backpack all along because of your interest
That's a combination, but I was also forced to do it by George Lucas. He said, "Don't create any fake myths or mythologies. Use ones and artifacts that are actual artifacts. Don't make up any artifact that doesn't exist." So that was, the one of the main things, one of the few things he told me at all about how to write these stories. And after that, I was pretty much on my own. Nobody was looking over my shoulder, editing, my story ideas. Once I just turned in the page and a half and they liked it, left me on my own. I think in the beginning, especially, they just thought that these novels were just a marketing tool for the movies, and they didn't really do anything like the Star Wars novels. They promoted them and they came out in hardcover. My Indiana Jones novels just came out one after another, not a word, not a single bit of promotion about them. So they're kind of a secret thing that came out, and people are looking for them, wondering when you never read anything about them. they just showed up at the bookstores. Yeah, two a year.
It's interesting because they fall into this era where there was so much merchandising about Indiana Jones. You mentioned the TV series, and there were the computer games and everything.
Yeah.
So
you'd think they would have put some money behind the books, but they never did. But they still sold pretty well, and I think they sold rights in, I think, 14 or 15 countries. And I know there's a Russian version out too, because somebody just told me they read one of my indie novels in Russian. I said, well, they never sold the Russian translation. Somebody just did that on their own. Illegally. China is also, I don't know if China did the Indiana Jones novels at all, but they did a couple of my other books that, great, good news and bad news. My agent said the Chinese are coming out with, there's a nonfiction book on color divination. And she said, the bad news is you're never going to see a cent from them.
Yeah, that's too bad. But yeah, I know that especially when it comes to Indiana Jones, the fans are, I think, so interested in, sharing sharing the content.
Right. Yeah.
There have been actually 8 Indiana Jones novels in Germany, written by a German writer.
Right. Yeah.
That were translated in several other languages, but never in English.
Oh, really?
And I don't know why. And just recently, I found English translations of all of the novels on the internet made by fans. Just
right.
That's
interesting.
That's a huge undertaking, right? To translate an entire novel, just to share it with somebody else. So
right, yeah, and especially we're not making any money from it, just love of the story and the fans. Yeah, I remember that when. I did sell, I think, at least 4 of my novels to German, the rights to German. And I remember being told that, well, they have their own writer because the situation with Indy and his is not the greatest friend of the German people of a certain era. so I don't know how the German author dealt with that whole saga.
They're actually all set, or almost all of them are set in the era where the movies are set. So several of them, feature the Nazis as the villains, and Indy is going out looking for Excalibur, and he's finding like a Norwegian ship from the northern mythology, and he's going to the Easter Island, and so there's some overlap with some of your stories.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that last one, that is saying that it kind of tied together everything. That was the least popular one because it got into a little bit of the inner world concepts, and a lot of readers and Indy fans don't see Indy as quite that mystical. He's more of a three-dimensional hero. I think that if I've looked at reviews, and that's the least popular of the ones that have been published. Over the years, one of the things that I always wondered about was, why aren't these novels available as ebooks? So I started asking about that. And what happened was, when I got to the right people, their response was not to turn them to ebooks, but to take them completely out of print, which was watch what you ask for. It made them look on, considering how well the novels are doing, and just taking completely out of print. So that was a surprise. And but I've been very grateful for having written these books and being paid to write them, because they're very enjoyable to write. I really had fun writing them. And I finished, I think the last one was published in like late 1992, and I continued to get royalty payments twice a year from both domestic and foreign. Japanese were very paid quite a bit of money for those books. I was surprised, and so that was nice. And then along came decision to sell Lucasfilm to Disney, and suddenly no more royalties. They just dried up, disappeared. Nothing happened. So then I knew the books were still selling, and that I should be getting something, and that. So it took me a long time working, contacting different people. And finally, I got a hold of a Disney accountant who was an Indiana Jones fan and had read all my books. And he said, I'm going to track this down. It took him like 6 months to figure it out. And he got all my back. It wasn't that much, but he got my back royalty payments. And I've continued to get something about once a year now. But, it's always a surprise to, those were written a long time ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah, well. Yeah, it does have the whole Indiana Jones story or premise, I think, has a long life. There's something that...
Yeah. I had thought that they would bring the books out again with the new movie coming out, but apparently not. They only brought out one, which The Army of the Dead, and that was really panned by fans as like the worst Indiana Jones novel ever written. That's the one they brought out again. Maybe because The Army of the Dead sounds like it's about zombies or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting how much that has changed. Also, when you tell me that this person at Lucasfilm was kind of worried that, that Indy was married in the novels, I get the feeling that maybe Lucasfilm, or the people at Lucasfilm, were more, let's say, permissive back then. So they just said, okay, well, this is something that we can use to expand the world, but we're not going to look at it this much in detail. And I think nowadays, all of this stuff becomes so precious to so many people, to fit into the chronology of what's already been established, and whether something belongs to the canon of the story that they established, and so on and so forth. So maybe that's why they're afraid to move along with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just grateful, like I said, that I was able to do those. And I don't know if somebody said that there's new Indiana Jones novels coming out, and one of the fans mentioned that to me, and so I don't know if that's true. I haven't seen anything about it, but it's the whole fan thing is very interesting with Indiana Jones, because there's Indiana Jones fans and there's Star Wars fans, and the Indiana Jones fans they always told the publisher editors told me Indiana Jones is not as popular as Star Wars, but the Indiana Jones fans are very into it, and much more committed than the Star Wars fans, actually. And people have rooms and museums in their house dedicated to Indiana Jones and collect all this stuff. And they got to collect the exact hat and jacket and pants and shoes, and the Wembley gun, and it can't be takeoffs, fakes. It's got to be the same ones that were used, and they would pay a lot of money, and maybe they still do, in these collections. And some of them have like 3 or 4 jackets, and of course the whip, it's got to be the correct whip, and
Yeah, well, I mean, there's something to learn from all the Indiana Jones novels, is that a whip will always come in handy.
Right. Yeah. 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 It's a tool that you wouldn't associate with an archaeologist, actually.
It's true.
But it's handy for swinging on vines or swinging from different objects to get from one place to another from time to time. How that's done, I'm not sure, but
Yeah, in the computer game for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, you could actually use the whip at the end to retrieve the Holy Grail. When the earth opens and the Grail falls down,
right,
and it
yeah.
just lies there on this little
okay.
down on the rock, and Indy can't reach it, but you can use the whip, and then you get back the Grail.
Okay, nice.
What are some of the influences that you had in terms of other writers when you were creating the stories?
I've had an interest in mysticism all my life. I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual oriented person, and I've also been very interested in the primitive world, the world of Native American mythology, mysteries, and related to shamanism, which I've pursued myself some over the years. And so I was a very big fan of Carlos Castaneda's books that came out starting in I think the mid to late 60s. I was in college when I started reading them, and they're very controversial, but he's archaeologist or anthropologist, and he actually his first book was his PhD thesis, and they're written as nonfiction, but a lot of people consider them fiction. I consider them kind of a mix of the two. And there's always the question: was Don Juan a real person, or was it Carlos's imagination? So the first 4 especially were influential to me, and so that was a major influence. But I read a lot of different writers, and I'm not sure how many of them really. I tried reading some of the old adventure novels from the 30s and 40s, and they're interesting, but they didn't really catch my attention that much and influence me. But
yeah, I mean, the interior world has, I think, very much an Arthur Conan Doyle flair, and maybe a Jules Verne kind of approach to the story.
Yeah.
At the beginning of your novelization of The Last Crusade, you have quotes by Joseph Campbell from The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and also by Carl Jung, I think, from his not his autobiography, but his collection of dreams and memories. Were those two influential on your writing?
Yeah, the Power of Myth, Joseph Campbell, very influential. Joseph Campbell was interviewed actually at Lucasfilm headquarters when it was in Northern California, and they had a big campus in the. Anyhow, at the when I went there, I was in that library where and doing some research where Joseph Campbell was interviewed there, and there's beautiful library and this winding mahogany staircase going up, and it and all of these books. It was really fascinating. And the Skywalker, it was called Skywalker Ranch, and at that time when I went there, you just drove in there. This was, before 9/11, and there was no security at all. In fact, I was wandering around in that campus trying to figure out where to go. And, it was just, very free form. And finally I found the person I was supposed to meet, and I was taken to the library there. I spent some time, but then I went back after 9/11 and the new campus in San Francisco. And oh my God, what a difference. It was like a college campus in a way, all indoors inside. And you had a badge, and you would walk about 500 feet and there would be security check you, and you'd go another 500 feet and to another branch, and there would be more security there. Very different. And, I was glad that I worked at home. I mean, they had great food and a great lunch place there for their employees, but it wasn't. I didn't find that environment that conducive to creative work. But But I've always worked at home since I left journalism.
Yeah, that's always a good thing, that a writer, the writer always has sort of his skill set with him, and he can work anywhere, and usually that's at home.
Exactly. You're right. Yeah.
Do you write on your laptop, or do you write by hand, or how do you outline your stuff by hand?
Yeah. Now I'm doing something totally different from what I was doing in years past. I have written about 23, 24 novels published, and Trish and I have written lots of nonfiction books, self-help books, but the market changed, and the editors changed, and the agents became more difficult to deal with, and so we've gone into a whole different skill set now, that we help other people with their books. We are basically ghostwriters now, and because my background, I worked through a British company called Reedsy, and people go to Reedsy that have interest in looking for a ghostwriter, and there's editors, a lot of editors who worked for major publishers in New York, and there's some writers as well. And so I get usually, I don't know, 3-4 different opportunities a month. Of course, I can't take them all, but like the one I'm working on now is a guy. It's got an award-winning script that takes place in ancient Israel at the time of the rebellion against the Romans, and it's a historical novel. It's a historical film, and so I'm adapting that. And so what's interesting is each of these projects are in areas that I have no knowledge of. And so I do a lot of research, and it's so much easier to do research now compared to when I was writing those Indiana Jones novels. There was no internet then. And, I had to rely on a lot of my own travel experiences. Indy went where I went in a lot of cases. and I was also had experience as, when we first started out, we were travel writers, and actually for a few years, Trish and I led adventure tours to South America for freelance writers. And so that last novel, the interior world, was influenced by some of those travels. that I did then. But so that's what I'm doing now, and I'm really enjoying it. My daughter said, "Oh, don't you want to get back and writing your own stuff?" And I have one novel that I've been toying with, but I'm just taking my time with it and going where the money is, basically. And this I can write a novel on spec and spend 6 or 9 months, and then it may not sell, or somebody might offer me $5,000 for it. Well, that's pretty thin wages for that amount of time. So and then you got to hope that it sells and you get royalties. So this is for my point in my career, I don't need my name on books. Although there's one I co-authored recently with, I ghost wrote, and the guy insisted I have my name on it with him. So I do that is one that I do. That like I said, I really enjoy doing this. And like I wrote one novel that took place in India in 1975, and so there was a lot of research needed for that. That again is a learning experience.
Yeah, I noticed that many of the books that you've written sort of tie in with what you've written about in the Indiana Jones novels, like the Indian mythology, for example. The Nicholas Pierce books are slightly in the vein of the Indiana Jones adventures, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I did write some young adult novels that take place on the Hopi Indian reservation, and so not being a native person myself, the character I created, it was somebody who his mother grew up in a wealthy mining family in Aspen, Colorado, and the father is the first Native American police chief on the Hopi reservation. And so he has a mixed background. The second book actually takes place in Aspen and the reservation as well. And so that's how I felt comfortable writing that character. And he came to the Hopi reservation as I did, as an outsider, because the parents were divorced. He was growing up in Aspen. So, but his father wanted him to spend time on the reservation to learn his other side. And so he actually attends a year of high school on the reservation, and has a love interest, and gets involved in a mystery, and Prophecy Rock it's called, and that won the Edgar Allan Poe Award for best mystery novel of the year for young adult category.
Yeah, that's one that's also been translated to German. There is a German version. I think it's called Hopi Summer.
Right. Yeah, I've got a copy of it here, the German version. And I noticed there's a lot of interest of Germans in the Native American legacy in the Southwest, because I spent some time in little town in near Four Corners called Bluff, Utah. Very small town, but there's a lot of archaeologists that work there and live there, because there's a lot of ruins and in that general area there. And the Bluff, Utah is completely surrounded by the Navajo reservation. So, and he had a Navajo housekeeper who I got to know, and got to meet her grandparents who lived in a hogan out on the reservation. And so, it's good experiences there. And she became the character in the Unicorn's Legacy. And so did Ed. And I had them with having romantic relationship, which wasn't happening at all. He was like 40 years older than her, but she was a little embarrassed by that. She said, I've never quite read a novel like this in my life, but it was very interesting. And she's in it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, with writers, you always have to be careful, right? When
right,
at some point or other, something you say or something that you do, or just some character trait is going to appear in your novel.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you looking forward to Indiana Jones 5? Are you going to see that?
Yeah, I've seen some little outtakes that look interesting, but I think there's been a showing, and the reviews aren't that great. I think it's like 50%. That's like half like it, half don't. So we'll see how it goes. It's a Disney production, which is different. So I'm looking forward to watching it. I mean, some people, these indie fans are odd. There's people who are, won't go to that movie at all, and because it's Disney and it's different, and then others just can't wait to go see it. And of course the fourth one was was controversial too, and some fans liked it, and a lot of them didn't. And it's probably it used to be the second movie was the one that was kind of a downer, but I think the fourth has overtaken that spot.
That's true. When the fourth one came out, a lot of people said, no, but the first three ones, those were great. But
right, yeah, that's the legacy fans. The first three. I watch them over and over and get excited about it. And one of the things, over the final comment here, over the years that I've had people writing me, contacting me, asking me questions and that, and 90% or 99% maybe are guys, and who most of them read these novels in their teens and got interested in. A lot of them tell me they got interested in reading books because of the indie novels, which is nice. And two or three of them have become novelists themselves. And but there's one woman who is writing me often, asking me a lot of questions. She's a writer herself, but kind of a little bit annoying. And one day I thought, this other guy who writes me a lot, I don't know what their personal situations is, but I'm going to introduce those two. And they both agreed to talk to each other. Well, they got to know each other, and they were both big fans, and now they're married.
Wow.
And actually, after all these years, I was in a trip where I had to go through Georgia, and they live in a small town in Georgia. And so I stopped and had lunch with them, and they were so grateful that I was the guy who brought them together. And they're big fans of my book. So that was the woman broke down crying, and it was,
wow.
So that was an interesting Indiana Jones experience. Okay, wow. Thank you very much.